Hey Joe, how you doing today?
Fantastic. Mike, how about yourself?
I'm doing good, doing good. We've been talking about all summer. Now we're kind of right around the bend with Labor Day. This was typically the time. I know for me growing up, not sure what was for you growing up. Was Labor Day was always kind of a nervous weekend because you were going to start school after Labor Day. How was Labor Day for you growing up?
Same thing. The anticipation, it was sort of a love-hate sort of thought process because, it's exciting to get back after several months off, but then the realization that you're back at it, hitting the books. Although sports, fall sports were always fun. As you know, ex-football player yourself. So
Yeah.
that part was fun. I bet the workouts weren't very much fun. Did you do 2 days back then, Mike?
Yeah, 2 days, and by that time, you were kind of winding out of 2 days, so you're happy and you're kind of ready to get to the afternoon, school after school practices. But that time of year, just being, from in the Midwest area, being Ohio, like that time of year is perfect, right? Just the fall, the way that things feel and they smell, just it's a great time of year to kind of get things going. Fall's great, and but same thing here in the Carolinas. It's really nice to have these long falls. So
Yeah, definitely. Well, hopefully the weather forecast will give us some relief on the heat. That I think today it said it was 92, but felt like 100. So, and I would say that that's pretty accurate because it felt pretty steamy outside today.
yeah, the humidity's been pretty pretty brutal and it's been hot. So the nice thing is the mornings have been pretty cool. So my dog walking abilities have been a little bit cooled off. But so we've got today on the show. Looks like we're going back to an expert in cyber. So who do we kind of have on the docket as today's guest?
Oh, we're thrilled to have Mike Muscatel on the line with us today. You and I have known Mike. You probably have known Mike longer than I have, but I got to know Mike through Ballantine IT here in the Charlotte area, and phenomenal guy, highly respected in the cybersecurity space. To give our listeners some background, Mike's got more than 25 years of experience in cybersecurity, and I love his LinkedIn profile. It says sometimes bad guys make the best good guys, but he also says that detection is key, but prevention is a must. So great tagline on his LinkedIn profile. So Mike, welcome to the podcast. I know that there's a lot more experience that you've had throughout your 25 plus year career. You can certainly fill in the blanks for us. Some of the highlights. You've had some really interesting roles in your past life, but welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you've had some interesting roles in the past. I know you're with a local favorite, Krispy Kreme these days, working on cybersecurity. What are some of the other more interesting experiences that you've had as well throughout your cybersecurity profession?
So a lot of what I was lunged into was doing the role of security back before it was actually a thing. So I worked for one of the big banks in town for about 10 years, and I was on the trading floor, so we were dealing with a lot of money uh, activity and so forth, more so than your typical bank activity. And so noticing when I think back to the operations on the trading floor and how people converged with each other and sent data and left things laying around, I think about kind of where we were and how loosey goosey we were with things and how easy it was to exfiltrate data just physically and so forth. And so when I left the bank, I went to a much smaller organization where we had clients that were banks, and so I had to take on a role that was more kind of wearing multiple hats. So the IT background that I have is pretty extensive, and it feeds into the security aspect of where I am today, and I value that greatly because the way I look at it is how are you going to secure something you don't know how it actually works, right? Um, have you taken it apart? Have you put it together? Have you troubleshot it? These sort of things. So over the course of my career and the different companies I worked in, I've made sure to take on responsibilities that kept me in tune with those particular IT functions, and then focusing a lot more on the security aspect of those functions rather than the core function themselves. And so I think that that's what's helped me, through working for the banks, working for the small organizations. I was at Snyder's for a while, Snyder's-Lance, and we built a great program there. It was very successful in that we did I would guess a case study with FireEye in 2016. And then we did another case study with Food Engineering Magazine, which I've been published in. And basically speaking about, how do we progress through, how do we deal with certain challenges, and so taking all that experience and bringing it to Krispy Kreme, finding that Krispy Kreme has been around since 1937, and understanding what is their approach to doing their normal business operations, and then how can we apply a company that's well over 100 years old as well that I came from, but also publicly traded. Krispy Kreme is private. So you deal with the different cultures as you go also through the different companies. And I had to not only understand, the IT and the security operational aspects of what each company was doing, but what each person is doing from a cultural standpoint. How do they look at the various things? So I think that all of that collectively makes up what my experience has been over the years in building.
Yeah. Well, in the 25 years, you've seen a lot. How was your interest sparked? How did you find your way into cybersecurity? And 25 years ago, there weren't the myriad of cybersecurity certifications. I think I saw a list of those yesterday or the day before, and the list was like overwhelmingly large. How did you find your way into the role?
I actually cracked my first video game in the 7th grade. So I figured out a way to take a floppy disk of a protected program and alter the floppy disk in a way that would allow you to copy the program and skip the security track that was actually on the program. But you had to physically alter the floppy to make it do that, and then you had to have a drive that would actually read of it. And I will not divulge whether or not I sold it for $5 a piece in school. But anyway, moving on. So it's been a thing of me to basically look at, how, and that's the one thing I want to highlight during this conversation is that everybody focuses on the why did this happen or what did they take. It's not about the what or the why. It's how. How was it done? How did they get it? And how could they do it again? So that thought mentality has always been with me on how can we, get around this? How can we make this work different?
Is that what you mean?
What we want it to do different than what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, and I'm assuming when you say sometimes the bad guys make the best good guys, you're really talking about how thinking like a criminal, and looking for those openings wherever you can.
Absolutely, because I actually absolutely. So I mean, if you're not able to put yourself in that position to where you want to think in those terms, it makes it very difficult to do this job effectively. There are different tiers of what we do, but can you pivot on a dime and look at something in a more malicious manner and think about, okay, how would I do this? So I can tell you that all the years that I've been tinkering around with things, I never crossed the line. I did get recruited by the FBI in 2000. I stopped working with them in 2015. And while I can't really go into what all I did, I can tell you that they latched onto that particular aspect of what of that mentality that I had. They liked that I had a moral compass, but also had another alternative compass if I needed it to be useful.
We'll have to have you back on the podcast when that statute of limitation expires on your FBI experiences, because I think those could be pretty fascinating. I'm guessing.
All the code names. You can tell you the code names, right? So.
Yeah, I had a few, yes.
You've been very involved. The FBI experience is one of them, and I know you're also involved in InfraGard here in the local chapter. Can you tell us a little bit about InfraGard and what the purpose of that organization is, and and sort of how it sort of manifests here in the Charlotte region?
Absolutely. So InfraGard is a private sector, public sector relationship. It's the ability for various sectors of our industry, whether it be um, utility, food manufacturing, um, anything that's critical infrastructure, to basically come together and work with the FBI, be fed certain information. As part of InfraGard, you do not get a clearance, but you do get access to information that you are only allowed to share depending on how it's classified within your organization. You're not allowed to publish it anywhere. So in a sense, you could basically call that secret but unclassified access, but you don't get an official clearance, if you will, right? So what does that do? So I'll give you a perfect example. So there was a situation where there was a router, a home router that hit the news, and they were like, oh, if you have this router, then you're going to get hacked. Well, as it turns out, from InfraGard, we actually got the exact model number, and it was two separate model numbers, and the exact issue with that particular model number and where it's being sold. So the point is that while I'm appreciative that the public sector is keeping folks abreast of various cyber-related issues with, especially home devices and so forth, it goes back to what is the real story, and InfraGard allowed folks to have that access to know, okay, well, this is only these two, and unless you have this, then you really don't have to worry. So that is one aspect of it. Another great aspect of InfraGard is the FBI Cyber Camp. FBI Cyber Camp is held annually. It opens up and it only allows 35 kids to be chosen. The kids go through a rigorous interview process and application process by which the Bureau is making sure that the kids that are coming in want and have a great interest in cyber. Their parents aren't vicariously living through their kids to learn cybersecurity kind of thing. It is high school, so it's generally ninth grade up. We typically don't see seniors in there, but we have seen some that have become seniors and come back as volunteers. We've had great speakers, including myself. We've also had Frank Abagnale out there. The guy from Catch Me If You Can. You're kind of thinking, okay, well, Frank's kind of an old school guy. Why is he talking to the kids? You got to think about where the kids are. They haven't quite reached the age where they have the exposure from a public standpoint, but their habits that they're dealing with now, and kids are very intuitive today. Their own actions, they can kind of let them know that, hey, by the way, if you start doing this and it gets to this point, you may want to make sure that you kind of reel it back a little bit. And what I told the kids is that it's not a matter of if your information is going to be used against you if you get in this game. It's a matter of when. So you have to be careful about what is actually put out there. So can you control your digital footprint? Absolutely, but it takes some serious discipline. And I think that the kids that are in this cyber camp are serious enough to where they have that little bit of paranoia, and they're willing to take the necessary steps and take a step back and take a look at what. So I think that those two, between the business aspect and the reaching out to the kids, is also a great part of the organization.
Yeah, that's I love the getting kids involved aspect, just because there's such a huge shortage of cybersecurity expertise across the globe, and cultivating that interest at a very young age is crucial to helping to fill that void. Hopefully none of those kids take what they learn and go to the dark side, but I'm sure that'll happen.
We have one. We have one that did that. But I will tell you a nice statistic, though, not so much the one out of so many. In the 6 years that I was involved with FBI Cyber Camp, we had, I think, the percentage of girls in the first year was around, I would say, 6 to 10%, maybe. In the 6th year, it was 43%. So just to see an influx of girls getting into cyber, and I can tell you one of the best folks in the game, and she scares the crap out of me just based on the stuff that she's able to do. She's there's some very, very talented females out there in the space as well.
What makes someone one person better than another other than just gray matter alone, but is there a specific set of characteristics that helps someone think like a criminal but then do good with that information? Is a set of characteristics or a way of thinking about the world?
There is that, but there's also I don't know if it's better than another. Even when I was competing in extreme sports, I mean, we always got asked by the kids, who's better than such and such, and like, what day is it, right? So in this game, it's more of the, what is your niche, right? What is your what do you bring to the table, right? Because everybody can't do everything, right? Everybody can't know everything. And I can tell you in my circles, I have certain people that I go to for specific expertise on things because I may have a general understanding of it. I may know how to maneuver in ways to perhaps exploit it. But when it comes to specific types of vulnerabilities, specific types of exploits, specific types of security posture, I will turn to these folks to ask them, what the best way to address those are. So we all have our niche that in a particular area that we're really good at. My particular area is mobile app and web application. So there is not a whole lot that I don't know in that space, but I focus a lot more in there, especially now that everything is really mobile. It's even more so to try to focus on that. But anybody that knows me knows that I was very passionate about the phones, how the phones speak. I actually wrote a 15-page article in Pen Test Magazine on called White Hat Approach to Insider Threat, and I speak mostly about the exfiltration of data without detection, and it's being done with an actual mobile device. So the point is that we all have our specialities, but yet we all have a common fundamental core that we work from. And the most strongest of us have that strong IT background as well. Today, unfortunately, you're seeing a lot of folks, get degrees in cyber, but they have no IT background. And not to besmirch the audit community, but in the audit community, I've seen people with finance backgrounds doing IT audit, which I still to this day can't figure out why that's relevant. But the point is that they are there, but they're eager to learn. So what's funny about that to me is while they come in and they really have no true concept of what I do, they have the questions. And the other thing about us in the community is we will be very happy to tell you whatever you want to know. And one thing that you'll find is that where the divide is those people that keep it close to their vest. I never understood that because we're all about giving back. But I can tell you this, that if you do cross over and you do something that is, very unfavorable, we'll shun you quicker than the Amish. So.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think the number of roles, the number of certifications we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, there's so doggone many of them right now. If you were advising a young person who had interest in cyber, what path would you suggest they go down? Because there's just so many different options. And I think you made a very good point about having a core baseline knowledge of IT, especially infrastructure and operations and networks and how they work, because everything is on a network of some kind. Where would you give advice, or how would you counsel someone who wanted to move into the cyberspace?
It's funny you should ask that, because I actually have a career talk that I do. It's a little work group that I put together, and we did this at my last company. I had the parents of different parts of the organization bring their kids in, and we had a career day. And the core thing that I always ask everybody is you have to find something that excites you. I always told my people that work for me, the day you come in and consider this a job, you need to go do something else, because we have fun here. I could tell you, I have a great admiration for some of the hacks that come out, because I understand what it takes to put those together. I understand the level of detail and process that goes into doing that. Sure, it's being used for malicious purposes sometimes, but you got to have an admiration for it. Now, if you admire it, it helps you understand it. It helps you get excited about wanting to learn more about it, and it makes it to where you want to learn more, right? And find different avenues. So with that being said, you could be a coder. You could be somebody who just wants to you could be interested in mobile, where you're looking at, not so much the operational access of the device, but device as a whole. So okay, here's how it completely operates. Take for instance, there's a group that went and grabbed the Amazon Alexa, and they physically took it apart and went through and saw where all the various functionality of it, and then they flipped around and said, okay, let's look at the software and communication side of it, right? So there's all these different aspects. So what excites you? What piques your most interest? I can tell you that one of the guys that worked for me in my last company, he actually came in and said, I want to really just focus on penetration testing. And, I know I'm not going to do that here, and I might have to leave to go and do that somewhere else. Absolutely, go do that. But here's what I told him. Look at what the trend is. Where are things going? And at the time, PowerShell with Microsoft was becoming more prominent. I said, you know what? Focus on PowerShell, because I don't know a lot of people who are really good at this. And he did, and he did so well. He's actually he got hired he's very young. He's still in his 20s. He got hired with a very prominent consulting firm that works very closely with three-letter agencies of ours. So for him to make it to there just speaks to not only his hidden talent that he had, but I also recognized it. And I was like, you know what? You go ahead and better yourself, but try to focus on this. And now he's been publishing things that he's written for PowerShell and that sort of thing. And that's what excited him. He stuck with that. He's not looking at other, hosted web platforms or focusing on Amazon or anything like this. He's focusing just on that particular aspect of it. So it just really depends on what excites you.
Yeah, follow your passion. Things tend to take care of themselves when you do. I love it. I think one of the things that I'm sure you get asked all the time, and I certainly do in my circle of friends and family, is on the home front, people have smart devices, they have networks, they buy a router and access points, and they pop them in their homes and don't change the default passwords, for example. What advice do you have for people in our listening audience in terms of what things should they consider in terms of their home networks and all of the different smart technologies that they've got in their homes?
I can tell you this because it's actually been published publicly. It's actually on YouTube video. One of the things that Alexa does is it allows you to store your Wi-Fi passwords at Amazon. Vulnerability that was found in Alexa was that those passwords are stored unencrypted. When Amazon was told about it, they said, yeah, that's how we designed it. And they haven't fixed it. Point being, don't store your passwords in the cloud. Okay? So if you're going to use these devices, then just know that you are giving up a level of exposure, whether you like it or not. To think that they're not listening, I always tell people, if you ever had something show up on a search of something you were talking about and you never actually searched for it, always listening. Okay, so if you're going to use it. Just you're accepting that level of risk. I have a smart refrigerator. It's great because I can keep track of what's in there, because Lord knows these refrigerators are huge now, and it's hard to remember that something's in the way back or something like this. But I can tell you that I did notice that when it connects out to the internet, it connected to the manufacturer, it connected to the warranty company, and it connected to two other places. That was very curious because they had nothing to do with the company. Long story short, that refrigerator is not allowed to connect to the internet. Sorry. So I got a nice red message that pops up on the screen.
Yeah, it is surprising, how much trust people put in those devices that they willingly plug into their networks at home. And those devices are definitely talking to a cloud somewhere, probably multiple clouds. And I think, California law, I mean, they're trying to address this with their new, I forget the acronym, but their new privacy laws, kind of mimicking what GDPR did for the European market. But I know earlier this year they have some new legislation that requires default passwords resets. I think we lost them. Mike, did we lose him?
I think we did.
Yeah. I think we were talking. I think Alexa kicked him off.
Yeah.
I think Amazon did. He said something bad about Amazon, and look what happens.
It happens. So
we'll give him a minute, see if he jumps back on, and if not,
well, I'm going to pause the recording since we're
at
this. Let me just pause it. So we're talking about a little bit of technical difficulties there. We'll see if we can get through this. So Mike, you're talking about Alexa. Question I have is, again, maybe because I'm more on the geek side, the technology side. What are your thoughts around quantum computing? What's real? How could that potentially impact us? And hey, the folks that get those things first could be in some dangerous hands. So what are your thoughts around quantum computing?
It's very real, and it's already in use. It's been used for many years. I can tell you that I have a friend that is a go-to friend of mine that after about 10 minutes of talking to him, my brain hurts because he starts talking about quantum cryptography. And so it's a very real application. It's not ready for the consumer, if you will. You're seeing a lot of people talk about machine learning and AI and all this other stuff. So there's bits and bobs of it coming out for people to experience with, but Raytheon has been very involved with that. Microsoft has been leading it with Watson that has a level of capability with that. Watson's actually been expanded. So they have a program now called telemetry. So it's a very real application, but it's only available in specific applications.
Yeah, I imagine once that technology becomes a little more, I'll say, market ready, the uses for that technology are almost endless. The good that can come from it, and then also the flip side of that is probably also true.
Yeah, there's I don't know this for certain, but there are other foreign governments that are very much involved with the capability of being able to take information and dissect it and process it at a very rapid rate and make connections to certain behavioral types. And that's the one thing I think that people forget is that it kind of came from that whole big data, right? We're doing the big data. And then you see companies literally finally getting to the point where they're very comfortable about big data. And they're basically telling you how they use it. They say, okay, here's this person that's doing this sort of activity right now. All right, let's go ahead and do an analysis and see what they'd be interested in 6 months, right? And so I can tell you, coming from the last company I was at, even the way that some of the social media stuff tracks, we saw somebody put a tweet out there that says, it's amazing how quickly you eat through a little snack of chips, and you don't realize that you've eaten 3 or 4 bags, before you're all done. And so for us, it was great because we're like, okay, the little bag thing is working, right? So there are good applications to it, but to your point, there are also very potential negative applications to it as well.
So in terms of how you occupy your off time, do you spend a fair amount of time on these sorts of things? Because I'm certain that in most businesses that I'm familiar with, quantum computing is probably not on the radar at this point. So what do you do in your spare time?
I deal with my 4-year-old mostly.
That's quantum computing in its own right.
Yeah, it is all by itself, her and Barbie. So no, I've gotten to a point where a lot of folks, you get to a point in the scene in the community where people share different things with you, and you seem to catch it. So I'll have something sent to me, say, hey, did you see this? And then I'll go and read up on it a little bit. But I try to keep up with the Joneses the best I can. I mean, you're never going to get ahead of the curve, right? I've gotten involved with some international publications like Pen Test Magazine for e-forensic hacking, where the people that contribute to those publications are the real deal. They're the folks that are behind that black curtain that you may hear about, sometimes never hear about. But they, there's certain things where you just there's so much information. It's like, how do you process it? When do you deal with it? And I think that instead of you having to go to it, you get to a point where it's coming to you, and then you can look at it at your own pace, kind of a learn at your own speed type of thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think your willingness to network with IT leaders in the region and around the globe, speaks volumes. I think it's, I admire the sort of spirit that you have with it. The give back sort of mentality is fantastic. And we appreciate you being on the podcast with us. And I'm serious, if that statute of limitations ever does expire at the FBI, we would love to have you back on to tell some of those interesting stories down the road.
I think it might be fairly soon. I actually got invited to speak at a case law class at UNC Charlotte, and to basically speak about one of the cases I worked on. So the person that is actually teaching that class is the supervisory agent that was in charge of the squad that I was actually a part of back when I was doing it. So the fact that she invited me to do that at some point is probably an indication, to your point, that it may be coming to that.
We'll make a note of that, Mike, and be sure to get you back on.
All right, very good. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Mike. We appreciate it. Anything you'd like to plug before we wrap the show up?
I would say that for folks that really want to go to a publication that, as I said, that tells it like it is, right? There's a lot of stuff out there that tells it like it ain't. Unfortunately, they put their own spin on it, if you will. But the people who I turn to, that I rely on, that scare me in some sense, right? That you just don't want to cross type situation. That's Pen Test Magazine. So once you go to pentestmagazine.com, you can go from there and see the other publications like eForensic. And again, the folks that contribute to that are global. They are from many, many countries and many, many different industries. So I think people will benefit greatly from it. I have publications there, so definitely check it out.
We'll put those in the show notes. Well, thank you so much, Mike. We appreciate you. We wish you the best. I know you've been a tremendous contributor here in the local Charlotte market and the region for just giving back to cyber and being that thought leader. So thanks for everything that you do, and we'll talk with you soon.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Guys.
Take care.
You too.